This is Karen with NewClevelandRadio.net, and it is time for Heart Mojo with Melinda Smith. And Melinda, it's been a crazy summer so far.
It sure has.
Yeah, it's like it's 95 degrees today here in Cleveland. Like,
I think so. Pretty close.
It's only June. I mean, summer just started.
Yeah, I know. We've had more days over 90 than I think the last few years combined.
Well, I guess
But it's not snow. Listen.
No, that's true.
It's not snow.
It's not snow. And Eric, I'm sure you are used to hot weather out on the West Coast, correct?
I'm very spoiled, and I have only a very small range of temperatures that I can tolerate now. It has to be within about 3 or 4 degrees, and anything outside of that is just too much.
Wow.
It's been extra warm on the West Coast.
Yeah, where I've been, it's been okay, but further north, it's been brutally hot. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Well, it is summer, so we need to take it while we can get it.
That's true. And I'm really not complaining. I've been inside air conditioning. However, my studio, the air conditioning is not coming into the room. So I've had fans all day today. I turn them off.
You don't have that windblown look. Where's the windblown look?
Whatever.
Hair going.
Anyways, for our listeners out there, Eric Teplitz has been on before with Melinda on Heart Mojo. And the last time we started asking Eric about his journey, and we sort of went on a number of tangents. And
we do that sometimes.
Yeah, we do. We probably will again tonight. So we'll have to invite him back again. But tell us a little bit about your journey. I mean, I obviously have heard it a couple of times, and I do not get bored hearing it. But you started out, thinking about being a musician, and you're wondering if you were going to find anybody to hook up with in your life, although I don't know why it would be so difficult for you, but that's just my opinion. But you've taken a lot of twists and turns. So explain it to our listeners.
Yeah, first of all, I'm as guilty as anyone for going on tangents. So feel free to reel me in at any point. I don't know really where to start because yes, it's true. There have been lots and lots of twists and turns in my journey, and it continues to be an unfolding, story. So maybe I'm just going along for the ride. I don't know. As you mentioned, I really had my heart set from the time I was a teenager on being a professional musician, and specifically a singer-songwriter. And I was very, very focused in that realm. And I had this belief that I didn't necessarily think that I was, the greatest thing to ever happen musically on earth, far from it. But I felt like, I'm good enough at this, and I love it so much. It just feels I just love doing this so much, and it's so meaningful to me to perform and to also write my own material and have that as an outlet of self-expression, creative self-expression. And I got positive feedback from people when I would perform, just for peers and friends. And so I really felt like this is my thing. Like this is my reason for being. And so I went after it kind of with everything that I had. And I told this story, I think, before on the last time I was on. Mm-hmm. The short version is that things didn't work out quite so well. And of course, it depends on how you look at it, but I did not reach my goal. My goal was really just to be able to sustain myself, make a living playing music, doing my own music, traveling around, performing, and creating new material, and just kind of an endless cycle of that. And I never planned on giving up that pursuit because it was my dream, and it was the only thing I really wanted to do with my life. And what I found was I reached a point where really I had kind of no option but to stop, because I was really blindsided by a pretty severe depression and a massive loss of heart, a massive blow to my to whatever it was that was keeping me at this and going. It took a serious blow, and my confidence took a serious hit as a result of putting forth so much sustained effort every single day for weeks and months and years, and not reaping the hoped for outcomes. And so basically I had this big disillusionment in my mid-20s. The illusion that I had been holding on to was that this is just a matter of effort. And I'm willing to put in the effort. So I felt like I will succeed at this at some point eventually, because it's just a matter of hanging in there long enough and doing it, and being committed, and again putting forth the effort. I felt like it was a winnable game through effort. And I started really questioning that at this point in time in my mid-20s, when I again went through this it sounds maybe over dramatic to call it a dark night of the soul, but as far as I'm concerned, that's exactly what it was. And so I had to absorb various losses, and what was most painful was just the loss of this dream that was my whole reason for being. It was everything to me, right? So I slowly realized, I think, that there were other things at play besides just putting forth effort, being reasonably talented, being committed, being persistent. All those things were important, but they were not a guarantee. Okay. And maybe I understood that sort of, but I really understood it over time. It took some time. And in fact, I really believe it now more than ever, because I've witnessed people that I knew at the time I was doing this, fellow musicians and so on, that were equally in it, equally committed to it. And I've seen that there's no promise of anything. Life is, death and taxes is it, pretty much. And it really disoriented me in a lot of ways. Anyway, you could call that the beginning, in a sense, of a spiritual journey, if you will, right? I was in this place of deep crisis and deep depression, and I didn't know how to get out of it. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know who I was. I didn't know what worth I had outside of this idea that I had of who I was supposed to be and who I wanted to be.
That was your whole identity. I mean, that's who you were. In your mind, that's how you saw yourself.
Yeah. And it was a distorted, to a distorted extent. I think if you would have asked me, or if you would have said to me, you're worthwhile outside of just because you can do this music thing, I probably would have said, yeah, and given it lip service. But no, I do think, just like you said, I do think that it made up a huge part of my sense of myself, my sense of my self-worth, and my identity in the world. And I was left now having to sort of reassess that. When I say now, I'm talking like half my life ago. And my mind's going in a lot of different directions, so I can feel myself about to go off on tangents. So I'll pause here and just let you direct.
Pause, direct. Well, what I was thinking of is, I can relate. First of all, I never anticipated being on this journey, doing what I'm doing now, both in my professional day life and doing the podcast. And that all came from that twist of having breast cancer, right? And I understand the loss. For me, I equate it to that, right? When you have cancer, whether it's breast cancer or any other type of cancer, you lose something about yourself and who you are and your identity. And particularly for women with breast cancer, going through treatment, they lose their hair, they may lose their breast. That is what we identify with. That's our identity. Just as you identified with being a musician and a and a songwriter. It's similar in that respect. And so I think if somebody's listening to this, it's okay to move forward and see where your journey is going to take you. It may not be what you thought it would be. I never thought I'd be doing this. I never thought I'd be working in the senior care industry that I do during the day. It's just, and I love it. I do love working with residents and I love helping people, but it's not the journey. It's not where I thought I would be. And
Yeah,
I think it's okay.
To quote, one of my songwriting heroes, John Lennon, life is what happens to you while you're busy making other plans.
Right.
Yep.
So true.
It's like, I can't say it better than that.
But I think if there's a good message coming out of that for you, for me, for anybody listening, it's the idea that it's okay. It's okay to take that bend in the road and see where life takes you, because maybe that's where you're really meant to be. I mean, if you look at all the people who perform in music, and there are a lot of them, I sing, dance, I used to sing with a band in high school. I didn't write music, but that's something cool. I thought I might end up doing that, and that didn't happen. So I went in a different direction. You look at all the people that perform on America's Got Talent and American Idol, and they're really good. And they may never do a thing with it, but what they're doing. So they're going to have to figure out what that piece of their journey is and where that's going to take them. And that's what you've done. I mean, you had to soul search and get through that. And like you said, have maybe a spiritual epiphany of where you're going to move next and know that it could change again.
Absolutely. And I think of it as sort of stumbling around in the dark. I mean, it's, I'm going to go off on a side tangent, but I promise it's relevant.
Okay.
It's okay.
I have a good friend who I've known since elementary school. He's one of the most unique people I have met, and I've met some unique people in my day. His story, in brief, was that if there were a Guinness Book of World Records for accumulating the most undergraduate credits before actually getting a degree, he's got to be up there for that record. He switched majors, I don't even know how many times. He switched schools several times and just kept hundreds upon hundreds upon hundreds of college credits without actually getting his degree. So finally, I believe it was around the age of 30, and we're same age, so around the time we each turned 30 or so, he finally got his bachelor's degree in biology after all these,
twists and turns.
Yeah. And, but he still didn't know what he wanted to do with his life. Now, as I remember the story, he basically went to see a therapist, and the therapist suggested to him, have you ever considered going to medical school? And for whatever reason, that's exactly what he decided to do. At the age of 30, he then dedicated the next decade or so of his life, really focused, to the whole journey that is medical school. And we're talking, in addition to med school, we're talking rotations that he did all over the country. He would have to go wherever he was assigned, and he did an internship and a fellowship and all of this stuff, right? Anyway, the point is that today he is a very, very well-regarded surgeon who specializes in burn surgery, of all things, like a very, really specific. He's done everything. He's done all kinds of surgeries and whatnot. But he's this very well-regarded, well-established, incredible surgeon. Why do I tell this story? I love this guy, but I hated him. He goes to therapy, I don't know, a couple of times. The guy says, hey, how about this? And then boom. Now, I'm not saying his journey was an easy one. My God, in fact, I can't even imagine undertaking it. Just you have to have a certain constitution, physically, you have to even be able to be functional without much sleep, which he absolutely, I don't know if he still is, but he certainly was. That was one of the things he was notorious for growing up. So I really, hated is a strong word, but I was I thought, why can't I get an answer like that? Why can't I just go to someone and have them tell me, oh, it's so apparent and obvious, you should do this with your life. Oh, okay, great, thanks, doc. And then I'm gone and doing it. My life experience was the opposite of that. It was endless scratching my head, wondering, agonizing, trying out things, hitting dead ends, just accumulating years of life experience, and always being curious and a seeker, and always being what's the word I'm looking for? Sincere. I mean, an earnest seeker, really like diligent in wanting. I remember writing in my journal, asking the question, what is it that life most wants from me? And what is it that I most want from life? And can we like meet in the middle somewhere? Or does this overlap? Can we agree? Can we like get in alignment? Because, I was just frustrated beyond words, especially because I knew what it was like to know exactly what I wanted to do without question. A lot of people still, whatever age they are, never had that experience, never had that sense of certainty, that sense of conviction. And, and I'm not saying that they're better off. I'm just saying that it's one thing to never have had that experience of knowing your place in the world, or feeling like you know your place in the world. And, if you've never had it, you don't really have anything to compare it to.
Base it on.
But if you've had that experience, here's the core of what I'm getting at. If you've had that experience, everything else pales in comparison. So, someone suggests, why don't you look into this? And I try something, and it's like, yeah, if music was a 10 in terms of how I felt about it and how much I loved it and was passionate about it and wanted, believed that it was what I should be doing, like the next best thing I would ever come across would be like maybe a 4. And it's like, if you've experienced a 10, how can you settle for a 4? You can't. It doesn't, it just is. So this was the story of my life. Part 2, I guess, and it really confounded me. But what it did was it made me do quite a lot of introspection and reflection and experimentation and exploration. So both working on my inner game and my outer game is how I would maybe put it. The inner game of really doing a lot of soul searching, really doing a lot of thoughtful self-examination, turning inward, reading a ton, trying to understand myself, trying to understand life. Good luck to us all. And so that was sort of the inner part of it. And then the outer game, like really putting myself out there and stretching the limits of my comfort zone, trying new things, being more open and willing to try things. And even if something like, for instance, was only a 4 for me and not a 10, not dismissing it outright, like giving it a chance, and learning from everything that happened.
Oh, absolutely.
Like learning from everything.
I looked for commonality in the jobs that I've had. What was the common piece to it in my career, in school? I wanted to be a doctor. So I don't remember if we talked about that last time, but, I was the first person to go to college in my family. So, and girls back then going to college, what were you going for? You were going to find somebody to marry. You weren't necessarily going to school to get a true education, unless you were a teacher or something like that, right? So I did the best I did the best I could. I went into psychology, right? So that allowed me to help people. And the common theme through everything I've ever done, for the most part, I had a shoe store job. That was just a job, right, to get by. But what I truly enjoyed was helping people. That's kind of been the theme, whether I was a fitness coach, I worked in plastic surgery, I was a director of medical skin treatment, I helped train doctors, I worked with patients. I mean, and today I worked with kids for a little bit in orthodontics, and then now I'm with seniors. But the common theme for me is I need to have that satisfaction that I've helped somebody at the end of the day. And I think that's how I ended up doing what I do now with the podcast and my social media, is to help people, to let them know that, whatever's going on in your day, it's okay. Tomorrow's another day. You wake up, you see the sun. That's all good, right? So I think for me, that's what I looked for. Would this have been my choice of profession? No. But at the end of the day, take a deep breath and know that I did something good. So that for me was what I had to look for in looking for a profession, because it wasn't my 10. I had my 10 when I worked in plastic surgery. That was definitely my 10. But it's close. It's close because I think I'm doing good in the world. And for me, that helps me sleep.
Well, see, and I think that's the bottom line. We have to feel good internally, whatever it is. I mean, if you felt good, scooping ice cream and, seeing people smile every time they got an ice cream cone, that's a great feeling. That's a great job. But most of us were brought up to believe that we had to have this great job that made a lot of money, that we had to have the big house, we had to have all the friends. And I think that's sometimes where we get stuck in our depression. We look outside of ourselves and we think everybody else has it so much better. And the reality of it is, once you hear them tell their story,
that's not necessarily the case.
Exactly.
The person with the most things is not necessarily the happiest person.
Exactly.
I think really when you look, music was in your heart, and it always will be in your heart. It's always part of your soul. It's who you are. For me as well, I love music. If I'm having a bad day, put on the radio, sing my brains out. It's, helps bring me back, find something that grounds me again. So I think you'll always have that as part of you, but the world had a different view of where the fates wanted you to be and to help people.
Yeah, I mean, it's, there's so many different ways to look at all this, and I've looked at it a lot. I promise you, and I think that there are a lot of gifts to be gleaned from our experiences, maybe especially the most difficult ones. And if nothing else, I feel like I'm living proof of the fact that you can have your biggest dreams not come true and still have a really deeply satisfying life. Like there's no one road to happiness. I had it in my head that this was the only way in which I could be, happy is a very generic word, but I felt like with a successful music career, meaning I was proud of the music I was making. I was doing what I felt was good creative work, my best creative work, and successful in the sense that I could live off of it, right? Anything more than that was gravy. I would have welcomed it, but that was how I defined success. And I think I believed that this was the only way in which I could ever achieve any kind of fulfillment and happiness and satisfaction with my life. It was like dependent upon those things. And wow, I have a lot I could say, but again, if nothing else, I feel like I'm living proof of the fact that there's life beyond what you think, and your limited views of what you think will lead you to satisfaction, will create fulfillment in your life, will make you happy. We have these ideas about what that is, and sometimes they're very rigid and sometimes they're very limited. When in actuality, there are so many things that we can't even imagine from the vantage point we're at any given moment that could potentially bring those things we most seek into our lives.
I think we have to be open. mean, that's the hard part. You know, we've learned, okay, here's your lane. This is what I want to do. And I'm going to stick those blinders on and I'm going to stay in that lane. You're not seeing the other pieces that really may be waiting to come in to move you to a different level, to move you to what you're truly meant to do. And I think that's the hard part, right? You had to be open, and you had to hit bottom to be open, it sounds like.
Well, and you know, every time I hear the expression "meant to be," I don't know. I'm not completely at home with that. You know, maybe I have to grant, like, possibly that's true, but I don't know. And my experience is that I've had the experience so many times in life of calling out. You might call it the equivalent of prayer, whatever you want to call it, and saying, just tell me, just help me, please guide me, show me. I'm desperate here and I'm willing, like, just please, like, help me figure this out, point me in the right direction. And what comes back? Silence. Absolutely nothing. And so now maybe that's intentional.
I was thinking that.
And so I think, you know, if nothing else, life will insist that you really get clear on your values and priorities. And those things, by the way, inevitably will shift and change as you move through life. But there isn't enough time to do everything, literally. I mean, our existence is finite. Right. And so but that's what makes our choices meaningful. If we had all the time in the world, then it wouldn't mean anything to choose one thing over another, because we could then choose everything eventually. So so by having this ingenious system where we have a limited lifespan, then it means that your choices take on much greater significance because of that. And so over time, you have to get clear about what is the essence, what is the core, what are the things that I care most deeply about. You might think it's one thing and then you might change your mind, or you might come to an awareness that there are different ways. Like, for instance, with your example, you found this common theme in the things that you've done. And I inferred that from that in the meaningful things that you've done. So you just had a common theme in the jobs I've had. Well, I could tell you common themes in jobs I've had, but the jobs all sucked. So I'm assuming that you mean a common theme in what was satisfying about the jobs that you've had.
Well, and the ones I've chosen to do. So when I didn't work, quote unquote, when I was raising my children, I did nonprofit work. I did that for a very long time. And what was the theme of that? Helping other people, raising money, making sure that they, for diabetes.
But I chose to work crappy jobs. I mean, that was my choice. I did choose them. I did each day walk in and say, yes, I agree to do this again. So right. that was my choice. But this idea, that you got to the essence, that the essence for you was feeling that you're being of service, that you're helping people, and that is the metric that allows you to go to sleep at night peacefully and feeling good about your day. And being clear about that. What's nice about that is that there are so many ways in which that can present itself.
Exactly.
It's not like I have to help people I have to help exactly this person and in exactly this way, or else I'm useless. Like, right. No, it's, I want to help people. Well, there's so many avenues for that. There's so many contexts for that. There's so many ways in which you can achieve that, almost regardless of your situation and environment. And how beautiful is that? The more, because then it's not all riding on something within your control, on things that aren't within your control, is what I'm saying.
As you talk about wanting to help people, when I was in corporate America, I worked for a college, and almost every student who walked into my office wanted to be a nurse. Why did they want to be a nurse? They wanted to help people. And I'd sit there and go, but there are other ways you can do it. I'm helping people. I'm not a nurse. I'm not a doctor. And they'd look at me, no. I took care of my grandma, and it was very meaningful to me. And sadly, probably 3/4 of them who started on the road to become nurses didn't even get accepted into nursing school. And when they would come to my office crying, saying, now what? Again, I would say, let's talk about other ways you can help people. And some of them started looking at it and started, checking it out. And, oh, I can help somebody if I do customer service. Okay, you can do that. And when we started looking at it, I started looking at my life differently too. It's like, I've always wanted to be around people and assist. I never thought of it as helping people. It was assisting them. And so we have to come up with a new dialogue for ourselves, because just because I took care of grandma, or just because I was a good mother with my child, doesn't mean I'm going to be a good nurse. And in fact, I would make a terrible nurse.
I just think that, part of the key to this is that we think we know ourselves. And the longer I live, the more I see how much this is not the case. And yet it's something we cling to. It's like, if we can be sure of anything, we know who we are. Like that's where a lot of us, I think, take some kind of it allows us to feel anchored and rooted in knowing something, right?
I think we know the perception. So I think we buy into the perception of what other people tell us about us.
Sometimes.
Or what we should be, or what our parents told us we should be.
This is huge.
Sure.
And, a lot of us spend a good deal amount of our lives just trying to differentiate what is my wish for my life versus what I've taken in from all of these other influences. Yeah. And some of us never even are able to make, able to just make any, able to actually tear that apart, pull that apart and distinguish between the two. And sometimes it's so complex and enmeshed that we might believe we're doing what we want to do, and we might be wrong. But and that's an example of, that's just one example of the way in which I personally believe that we never fully, completely know and understand ourselves. I don't care how much work we do, how much introspection, reflection, journaling, how much therapy. I am convinced, and this is not a bad thing necessarily. In fact, I think it's actually a good thing, because it means there's always more to learn about ourselves, to discover about ourselves, and to explore about both ourselves and in terms of explore in the world. For one example is that we might think we know how we would behave or react in a particular situation. We might be right about that, and we might be wrong about that until we've actually had that experience. We don't know, it's conjecture. And also, we don't know, we can't imagine all of the things that might influence us along the way, all of the ways in which we might change our perceptions about things. If you think you know yourself, I think at best, you know yourself. I mean, I don't know. I was just going to say that, again, everything's always changing. So even if you somehow caught up and we're like, okay, I know everything about myself, everything. A second later, you wouldn't, because now things have changed. And it's like, that's the nature of life. Everything is.
I was just going to say that's life. Wait a minute, and it changes.
Yeah.
If we can look at anything, let's look at the past couple years.
Oh,
I mean,
it's never been in my lifetime
everybody.
a more in-your-face example of that, of just how uncertain. Life has always been uncertain, I'm pretty sure. I haven't been around forever, but I'm pretty sure that uncertainty has always been the order of the day, and change has always been the order of the day. And yeah, that has been in our faces to such a degree in recent years, where if we didn't get that before, we would have to be like living under a rock not to see it now. And then the question is okay, so how do we deal with that, and what do we do with that? And part of that, you mentioned being open, and I think that that's really important, because a willingness and an openness to explore other alternatives, other ideas, other possibilities really is where it starts. Because if you're not willing, that how many therapists does it take to change a light bulb? Only one, but the light bulb has to really want to change. It's like that willingness. If you've decided no, like you're just not willing to entertain other options, well, then then there are no other options. Because you're right, it does start with that willingness and openness. And we can be really shut down from that. And yeah, in my case, I mean, I think had to hit a sort of rock bottom for me to start entertaining other options and exploring more and being open to other things other than just this narrow, rigid idea of who I was going to be in the world and what would make me happy. And, so yeah.
Do you feel that younger people right now, and I'm just going to say that because they're younger than me, but as we went through COVID, it was much harder on us in this age group, older individuals. And I'm not talking about because they could get COVID and more likely to die. I'm talking about dealing with the change. Because when you're young, you kind of do roll with the flow, oh, this happens at school. Oh, I got to do this. I got to do something else. As an adult that's been living in the world, well over 50 years, it's not so easy to make that change. You had a lot of angry people, a lot of frightened people, and will they ever go back? Will they reopen themselves up? I don't know. I see some people will never go back to life the way it was before because it's totally been changed. But younger people can adjust easier because they're not.
It's funny that you see it that way. It's a generalization, obviously. I kind of had the opposite impression from my vantage point. And that's all that it is it was my vantage point.
Right.
So I remember in the, what were the early days? I mean, we're how long into this thing? Like,
the beginning of COVID you're talking about?
Yeah, the early days of COVID. I mean, we thought it was going to be a couple weeks, maybe, oh
yeah, we're going to shut down for 2 weeks and we'll go back.
It's staggering to me just thinking back just on different moments in time during the course of all this and how perspectives have changed. And I was just having a conversation yesterday, I think it was yesterday, with someone, and they were saying like, yeah, when we were only 7 months into this, and I'm thinking, yeah, now go back in time to March of 2020 and let yourself hear yourself saying when we were only 7 months into this.
Yeah.
Like, what?
Exactly.
So all this
If we really looked at history, if you looked at that last pandemic, it was a good 2 years with that
and
Spanish.
it's like it's cyclical, like of course
Yeah.
it's supposed to happen, blah blah blah. My point of view, it's interesting about younger people. Yes, in some ways younger people are more adaptable. In some ways there are, I think there's trade-offs everywhere you go in life. And I think that there's, like, you have the benefit as being from the point of view of an older person, older relatively, that you've been through things. And so you might actually be better able to adapt and adjust than a young person who doesn't have the tools necessarily, hasn't built that
Toolbox.
So I think it very much depends on each individual's unique situation. I don't think it's just a function of age, but I remember at some point during the early days of COVID, reflecting with my wife, first of all, just being so grateful. I mean, I'm grateful for her every day because, just for a number of reasons. But I was so grateful that we had each other to go through this with and to, to be there for each other during where, so many people perhaps had no one or certainly.
Exactly.
So I was grateful for that. And I was grateful that it wasn't just any partner, but someone that I adore and cherish. And we have this amazing connection and we both feel that way. Like, so that's, because some people might have been living with someone And it just, all that COVID did was make them realize how bad of a situation it was. And now you're kind of like trapped with each other in lockdown.
Right. And it
So,
actually increased the divorce rate.
yeah.
Because when we sort of are out of COVID, it's like, I'm out of here. I got
Yeah.
stuck with you for a year.
So, but I just want to finish this one thought, which was just that I remember thinking that I felt very fortunate to be the age that I was when this was happening. And the reason for that, in part, was because I felt like for kids, and when I say kid, I'm talking about pretty much every age a kid could be, into even young adulthood, kids into young adults. I felt like what a ripoff for them. Like, what a ripoff. Look at all of the things that we were able to do and experience, even just like milestones, even things that you just like, just hanging out with friends, peers.
Exactly.
But, people who were finishing, like graduating from high school or experiencing any kind of like life milestone along the way. And it was basically like taken away from them. Now, not completely, but
it was no
but it was, and
crime.
I just I felt like I was the ideal age in a sense, insofar as I felt like younger people were really getting ripped off, really screwed as far from my vantage point. Like, even if I died today, and I hope I don't, but if I did, I've lived a full life. I feel like I've gotten to do so many incredible things. I've had so many incredible experiences. I hope to keep having more. I hope to keep, growing and enjoying life. But at the very least, like, I got to do all that stuff. And then for people significantly older than myself, how terrifying to live through this, how utterly terrifying. And as you say, I mean, you're more vulnerable. A lot of people are alone or just don't have many resources. So I felt like I was sort of, my wife and I felt like we were sort of like, and again, this is from a privileged vantage point of, privileged people who have a good overall life situation. I felt like we were kind of the idea in the sweet spot if you had to be at any age to be living through this, because it seemed to me that those older and younger than myself were getting a rawer deal from my vantage point.
So when I was thinking younger people, I'm not thinking high school or early college. I'm thinking professional people who might be 30 and out in the world. They're already brought up in a world with computers and doing a lot of things online and on their phone and ordering the food online, which I never do. Like, I never do that. I don't even know how. The point is, I think that they adapted easier to that.
In some ways, I would say I could see that, and I could say, like, from a practical, being like digital natives and all of that, and knowing the lay of the digital landscape. And
a lot aren't going back to work. They've now found a way to work from home, and they're not going back out into the world and working.
Yeah. But I do still think, Melinda, that you had, whether you realized it or not, you had an advantage over many of these people you're talking about. And that's simply the advantage of life experience and the advantage of the resilience that you've built and the advantage of perspective that you've gained, and knowing that you can handle things, knowing that you can survive things. And younger people don't have as much of that. Now, again, this is very much
right. We're generalizing.
Yeah. But I mean, to that's the gift of older age, if you will, is that you know yourself better. You have a better, again, generally speaking, we never know ourselves completely, according to me, but but you I don't know. I think that there are always advantages and disadvantages at every age and stage of life.
Sure, yeah.
That's how I see
absolutely. Absolutely. Well, we're almost coming to that end point again, but what I really think we accomplished tonight is that nothing is ever going to be perfect, and that's okay. And
And don't wait around for it to be,
Right.
enjoy your life.
Exactly.
Help the person you can in the context that you're living in, that, be the best you can in any given situation, do the best you can in any situation. And you're right. It's like, if by some miracle, everything ends up being perfect at a given moment in time, blink and it'll not
And
be.
it'll change.
Yeah.
Well,
So don't wait
life
around for
continues to-
perfection, right? Don't wait around for perfection to live your life, enjoy your life, and be your best, contribute to life.
Life continues to morph. I mean, if we look at the virus and how the virus has continued to change, that's the way life is. That is
Absolutely.
actually quintessential life right there. There's a being, there's a life existing in this virus, and it continues to morph and change. We have to do that as well as we move forward.
I think it's the single best attribute to cultivate is the ability to adapt. The way I've put it in the past is, if you can learn only one skill, you should learn the skill of learning new skills, which basically just means be adaptable, learn how to adapt, because life will insist that you do in an ever-changing world, right? So, the more you can be at home and grounded in the lack of groundedness, the better off you'll be.
I love it.
So before we go, I have to ask this question, burning question. Are you still singing and writing music on the side?
Oh, that's a great
Still do
question.
that?
I have not been for a while. Yeah, I mean, music is always in my life in some form or another. But no, in fact, because of COVID, my outlets for performing went down,
Right up.
And I found myself so consumed. I started this business of coaching and content creation, and I'm still finding my way, but I've found that the irony is that by quitting my job and being now owning my time, and now it's all like, I'm now the master of my time, in a sense, I have less free time than ever, which is really a weird thing. And Karen is
I totally understand.
Get it. Yeah. Because it's like, whereas a job, I could turn it off at the end of when it's over, and I could do the things that I want to do. This is constantly on my mind, whether I like it or not. And it's a good problem to have. It's more good than not. But one of the things is that I've had less time, or I've decided I've made less time for music in my life, in terms of having it as an outlet. And
Right.
so I can recalibrate that. I'm not worried about that. I know that like everything, there's ebb and flow, and I'm not worried about it.
It'll pop back up.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
important to you. I mean, I put my singing and dancing into my weekly. We go to senior locations, senior communities, and sing and dance every week, and spread some cheer there. And that's how I put my music.
That's a great way to have it on the calendar, to insist that it's a part of your schedule and part of your life, is a great idea, for sure. Yeah.
And I'm still giving back, right? Part of what I do
Absolutely.
every day. So
You surely are. Well, again, a great conversation.
thank you for being on again.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks for inviting me.
I'm sure we'll have you on for part 3.
I was just going to say that there's going to be a part 3, I'm sure.
Absolutely. Everybody have a great day. Take care now.
Thanks. Good to see you.
Thanks so much.
Bye-bye.